G'day, everyone. Welcome back to the Game Changer podcast, where we're here to fuel that youth sports journey for our parents, for our athletes, for our coaches, for anyone involved. Today, we sat down with Wayne Goldsmith, and it's an amazing chat. A real privilege to be able to get Wayne on the show. Wayne's journey is nothing short of remarkable. From being a high school dropout with absolutely no clear direction, he has now become one of the most globally respected coaches, mentors, speakers, and a thought leader who's worked with Olympic gold medalists and champions, professional teams, world champions. He works for national programs and organizations around the world, Premier League teams, the All Blacks, US basketball teams, you name it, he's done it. If I read the list of who he's worked with, it'd probably take an hour. If you've ever wondered about what it really takes to unlock potential on the field, in the classroom, at home, Wayne's your guy. And what I love about Wayne is he's not about gimmicks, he's about people. And one quote that really stood out was, "You don't coach a sport, you coach a person." That one hit hard for Belinda and I. And it's just one little tip, one little quote that was the beginning of the wisdom he drops in this episode. We know you'll love this one. It's a really important one to listen to as a parent, but you'll get stuff out as an athlete. You will definitely get stuff out from a coaching perspective. We hope you enjoy it. Here it is.
It gives us great pleasure to welcome our next guest, Wayne Goldsmith. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. It gets me inside from the outside. I live in North New South Wales, and be fairly honest to say that we've had rain more or less every day for 6 to 8 weeks. So this is a great opportunity to stay inside and catch up with a couple of great people.
Awesome. Well, actually, we've got a storm coming our way too, so the weather for us is not too great either. Hey,
well, sorry about that. I think we sent it your way.
You
You did. If we disappear, it's because the roof is blown off. The winds are a bit crazy here at the moment.
Yeah, crazy.
So we're going to jump straight in. So Wayne, we are the Game Changing podcast. What do the words game changer mean to you?
Well, it's a good question, Belinda. There's a great phrase I like, which is the people who win change the game, because there's always people who are daring to be different, want to be original, see what is and wonder what it could be. There's always people who've been successful in any walk of life by daring to be different. And if they work hard, and if what they've come up with is right, which is a pretty important part of it, and they win, then everybody copies them. Everybody follows what they do. And so if you win the rugby championship and the head coach of whoever it is, Crusaders or Highlanders or anybody else, gets up and says, "This is what we did," well, everybody else in the room, or the majority of people in the room, copy it. And I like to say that in this business, particularly in the high performance end, copying kills. If you're sitting in a room copying what someone else has done, and then you're going to try and apply that out of context in your own situation and hope it's going to work as well as the originators, where you're fooling yourself. So when I see a game changer, it generally means they've won. They've been successful. They've come up with a solution for their own unique situation and context, and they've made it work. And then they change the game. They change the direction of the sport. Whoever wins changes the game. And it's fascinating, because I always think, if you go and watch someone who won. So if I was coaching Olympic gold medalists, and I've come back from LA in 28 with 3 Olympic gold medals, someone invites me to a conference, I'm not going to stand there and tell people what I did. I'm going to tell them what I did in the past. I'm certainly not going to tell them what I'm going to do next, because I want to gain and retain a competitive advantage. So yeah, in short, game changers have won, and then everybody copies the winners.
Wayne, can you share a person or a moment that has been a game changer in your life, and why?
Look, there's been a lot. I think if you're open-minded and inquisitive about this business, you're meeting people every day who'll change your views and change your perspectives on life. Look, I'll give you an example from yesterday. We live in the bush in New South Wales, and we had about 8 tons of rocks delivered. And the guy dumped them outside. And then my old mate from next door, Bruce, there are Australians called Bruce, but there was a Australian mate, my old mate next door, Bruce. He comes in and helped me move the rocks around, but he's a professional fisherman. And he said, look, the waterways around here at the moment are terrible. And all the old fishermen know the solution because they're on the water twice a day. They've been doing it for 20 to 30 years. And he said, you know what? Somebody from one of the universities has done a study saying that we're wrong. And that person is in their early 20s and they're doing a PhD study. And I sat there and I said, mate, it's the same for us in sport, is that coaches, if you've been coaching for 20 years, you've got a PhD in coaching because you live it and you're invested in it and you live to help kids get better at what they do. And then someone comes along and does a 3-year master's or PhD, presents it, and it's got more weight and more credibility than the 20 to 30-year-old practitioners. And so as he walked away last night, Belinda, I went, you know what? I'm going to do an article today on coaching PhDs. If you've had 20 years, what does it mean? And then I started to think, well, hang on a minute. There must be a way we can do this where we integrate the academic side with the practitioners and get a better model. So in terms of a game changer for me, if your mind is open and your heart's open and you accept the fact that you don't know everything, you're meeting game changers potentially every day in every walk of life.
Yeah, we at school, we're all about growth mindset. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Where did all this start for you? You're talking about, I mean, you've been doing this for over 30 years. How did you get into coaching, Wayne, and what was your start?
Oh, I didn't. I failed high school really badly. I got in the New South Wales system. It's a score, used to be a score out of 500. I got 121, which means that the only jobs that you're really qualified for normally involve deep fryers or brooms. And I always thought that I could have done more, but I failed high school really badly, got in trouble, was drinking fairly early, and was quite happy just living in the western suburbs of Sydney and hanging out with the guys that I went to school with. And I was in my late 20s, friend of mine that I trusted and I still do, one of my schoolmates said to me, Goldie, you're fat, you're lazy, you're unhealthy. And at school, you used to run, you used to play football and used to run. Why don't you try to do the City to Surf with me? So I trained for a while. And just before the City to Surf, there was a seminar on how to run the City to Surf effectively. It was a guy called Dr. Dick Telford, who was the head of physiology from the Australian Institute of Sport, which had only been open at that stage 7 or 8 years. And he stood there and talked about sports science and what sports science was all about. And I went, man, what a job, just working with sport, measuring talent, working with. So I went up to him after the show, one of those annoying people that do that. And I said, how do you become a sports scientist? And he said, well, you got to do uni. And I said, oh, look, I failed. He said, look, I'm going to put you in contact with somebody. And he put me in contact with someone from the University of Canberra. And he said, all right, so you failed high school, not the end of the earth. I want you to follow this as a path, which was to go back to TAFE and do science. So I did chemistry, biology, maths, and I snuck through that somehow. He said, oh, go and do a coaching course. So I did swimming and strength conditioning and track and field. And he said, start coaching athletes. So after about 18 months of doing that and sitting in an exam, I argued my way back into university and again just sort of snuck through that. But if you want to think about a game-changing moment, Australia won the bid to host the 2000 Olympics in 1993. And Swimming Australia said, what we need is somebody who's comfortable in the science world, somebody who's comfortable coaching, and someone who's got a big mouth, which is certainly, I tick all the boxes. So they hired a position, or they put out a position called National Manager, Sports Science, Sports Medicine and Coaching, with a specific task over the 7 years leading into Sydney for someone to bring science, sports med and research closer to practicing coaches. And I did that, and that was maybe the biggest life changer that I had, because the same day that I start, a guy called Bill Sweetenham starts, who's a legend swimming coach. And then I'm working with some of Australia's greatest coaches and swimmers every day. 96, we go to Atlanta, and we weren't very successful. And came back from Atlanta, and my head coach, a guy called Don Talbot, said, look, clearly we don't know what we're doing anymore. We need some new ideas. And he gave me 6 months to go and research what cricket was doing, what AFL were doing. So that was the first time I went, hang on a minute. We think that, there's a great line that says, to someone with a hammer, every problem's a nail. We were looking for success within swimming. I spent a couple of weeks with Collingwood football, and they were doing things that we hadn't even thought of. I spent a couple of weeks Australian cricket team, spent a couple of weeks, and I just went, wow, these guys, there's so much going on here that we're blindly, completely ignorant of, because we think that our little patch is all that matters. And that changed a lot for me, because I went, it's the solutions are out there. You've just got to lift your head and be prepared to look. And then that just rolled, and that's opened so many doors from that moment. So I've got to track it to Don having the vision to realize that the problems that we were trying to overcome in swimming weren't going to be solved from within our swimming knowledge base. And that created friendships in Wayne Smith in rugby in New Zealand, that opened some doors, and Eddie Jones, and people all over the world, really, from that moment.
So I'm really curious. You're super passionate about coaching parents. Was there a particular time where you've spoken about working with these Olympic athletes where you sort of realized, I've got to harness these parents or educate these parents, because this is going to have a big, effect on my athletes? Was there a moment there, or did this happen over time, or did you already have that?
Yeah, it's a lot of moments and a lot of discussions with a lot of people that, my mum used to say, you've got 2 ears and 2 eyes, 1 mouth, so you listen and look twice as much as you speak. There's a lot of people with incredible expertise if you ask them for their views. And I was on a plane with our psychologist at the time, Clark Perry, and he said, one day we're talking about, he said, some of the problems with athletes are all values and character. They're all, about honesty, respect, integrity, humility, courage, discipline. He said, the research in psychology tells us that all those traits are in place more or less by the time the kids are about 8 to 10 years of age. So he said, I don't know why we don't do more work with parents, because a 17 or 18-year-old athlete, there's not a lot of change you can really make as a coach if those values around who they are as a human being, their self-love of themselves and acceptance of who they are as a human being, if they don't have that by the time they're 8, 9, 10, very, very difficult. And Belinda would know this as a teacher, very, very difficult to teach those core values, character traits, self-love, those things, once they're 15, 16, 17, really difficult. So after Clark told me that, I started talking to coaches, and I spoke to a netball coach at the time, our national netball coach, and she said, she said, when the girls knock on the door of the Diamonds, they should be ready to be diamonds. I shouldn't have to teach them about honesty and integrity, and they should have all learnt that from their parents and their junior coaches. So, my brain's starting to go, well, all right, well, why are we spending so much time and effort with sports psych programs with senior athletes? We've really got to be doing this stuff a lot younger. Mm. And then you hear things, for example, your great rugby coach, Steve Hansen. So Shag says, in one of the best interviews you'll ever see, and you should track it down, where Shag says that he's talking about All Blacks, and he says, being an All Black doesn't make you a great man. It doesn't endow you, with special powers, putting on the black jumper. But being a good man will make you an All Black. And, so there are all these brilliant people that tell you the same thing, that who you are as a human being will determine very much the athlete you become. And so much of that stuff has to be in place by age 8 to 10, depending on what research you follow. So then I'm out working with coaches, and I'm starting to think, there's a missing piece of the puzzle here. We can work with athletes on time, technique, strategy, tactics, physiology, racing. We can do all those things. Coaches, we can teach periodization, planning, technique, strategy, sports science. Yep, we can do all that sort of stuff. Who's teaching this other stuff, which is the engine driving the success of the other two areas? Well, it's parents and carers.
Does that then change how you measure success in youth sport? I mean, like Australia is just like New Zealand, right? Where sport is put on this pedestal. It's such a huge part of culture, and where success can often be thought of as winning or making it professionally. Is that how you see it, or do you measure success quite differently within your sport?
I think you've got to go back to a little bit of experience, a little bit of common sense, a bit of data. We know that in general, there's always someone who'll say, "Oh, there's an outlier. What about Lionel Messi? He was a star at 6." Well, there's 250 million people play football around the world. Some of them, unfortunately, are Liverpool fans, but there's 250 million people play football around the world. There's one Lionel Messi. They're not good odds. You got more chance of winning Lotto this week than producing a Lionel Messi in your family. So forget about that. The reality is, and I keep trying to get people to think logically. The only kid who doesn't get better is the one who's not there, the one who's not coming anymore. So therefore, our fundamental existence as coaches and parents and clubs has to be finding ways to create engaging environments and exciting opportunities that give kids the chance to fall in love with the game. Because if they fall in love with it, if you love what you do what you love. That 30 seconds that I've just thrown out there, that summarizes the last 25 years of my working life. It's so simple. Anyone can understand that. If they're not coming, who cares what equipment and resources you've got? Who cares how great the grandstand is? Who cares what your strength training facility is? If they're not coming, it doesn't matter. And so coaching, parenting, club management has to be totally focused on creating an environment which gives the opportunity for kids to fall in love with doing what they do. And if you get that, everything changes. You go, well, yeah, sure, they're winning, but do they love the game? Well, if they don't, they're going to drop out sooner or later. And every sport in the world, I'm doing a tour of Canada, USA I might avoid for a whole bunch of reasons, but Canada, Ireland, England, a couple of other places at the end of the year. The briefings already, number one issue on all the briefings are teenage dropout. Number two, dealing with parents. So everyone, Gaelic football in England, swimming in Canada, all the groups that I'm working with or will be working with at the end of the year, in their briefing notes, it's the same stuff. And the obsession with early success and early winning is just not working for us, because that's also a consistent thing around the world. If parents can take a breath and go, hang on, my child loves this, they'll keep turning up. If they keep turning up, if they've got the talent and the drive and the passion, there's a chance one day they might be good at it. But if they haven't got this, they'll never get that. You can't force excellence. You can't make someone be brilliant and be successful for a long period of time unless you're living in a country with a political system that supports that. But for us as democracy, supposedly, you can't force kids to fall in love with a sport if they don't want to play it. And if they're not in love with it, they stop playing. Doesn't matter what their VO2 max is or how much talent, who cares? They're not coming. It's irrelevant.
Needs to be fun, engaging, where they're going to work. Yeah, totally agree. Wayne, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that parents and coaches have about youth athlete development?
Oh, the number one to me, Belinda, is really straightforward. I've been on this soapbox for a long time, is the pathway concept. It's the dumbest thing in sport, yet so many sports. I guarantee if you Google National Pathway Manager, every sport in New Zealand will have somebody who's the National Pathway Manager, National Director of Pathways, RSTs, would be Regional Pathway Coordinators. Australia's the same. It's all over the place. There's more pathways in sport than actual pathways to walk on. The problem is the way that the pathway is delivered. It wasn't a bad concept originally. because it was originally designed by well, those two Canadian guys. Their names escape me from time to time, but it'll come back to me. But well, Eastern Valley, that they came up with LTAD, long-term athlete development, and which is the underpinning philosophy behind the pathway, it made sense. The long-term sequential development of physical, mental, technical, and tactical qualities from learning to play the game and having fun through to being an elite athlete. There was nothing wrong with their idea. The problem is that we've implemented it with the assumption that every kid who picks up a cricket bat's going to play for the Australian team. Everybody who picks up a rugby ball is going to play for the All Blacks or the Black Ferns. Everybody who picks up a netball is going to play for the Diamonds or the Silver Ferns. We've completely screwed this concept so that people go, well, I need to get on this pathway, because to their mind, a pathway, like our pathways outside, is a direct and linear progression from picking up the cricket bat to playing in the World Cup. And the real progression looks like that. It's ups and downs and difficulties and flat periods, and there's all those. And the best example I can give of that is Tennis Australia were doing a review, and I got called in as an expert witness. And a guy from one of the big management consultancies said, Wayne, we think the pathway's killing sport. And I said, that's really interesting. Why do you think? He said, well, because he said the overwhelming perception of sport and the pathway is that every kid who picks up a tennis racket is going to be Roger Federer. And he said, it's the stupidest thing. He said, we can't believe you guys so blindly believe in this thing. And he said, it's like saying to every child who picks up a crayon, instead of drawing a horsey or a unicorn or a cat, is to say, hold it this way, because when you're an orthopedic surgeon, that's how you'll have to hold. He said, you guys have got this assumption in sport that it's all about elitism and about winning at the top level, and you structure it and organise sport almost with an inevitability of beginner to All Black. And he said, it's the stupidest thing we see, and we can't believe the sport doesn't see that. I said, mate, I totally agree with it, but you try and change it. You go to one of the national sporting bodies and get them to seriously change from an elite pathway model to a mass participation and then targeted elite model, which is the way I think it's got to go. Too hard, too difficult, because the pathway is so cemented in sporting cultures around the world. And look, we just got to keep trying to break it down.
And I think there's a lot of parental belief out there too, that they get their kids into this pathway and it's going to take them somewhere.
Yeah, and Ben, the most popular video that I've got says there's no such thing as an 8-year-old champion. And look, I get everything from, Wayne, we agree with you, to absolute abuse. There's an Instagram post someone did of that, reposted that little chunk. And there's people on there saying, who is this idiot? He doesn't know what he's talking about. And you know, that's what happens when you stick your chin out too far. People want to hit it. But, you know, it's just so insane to think that, you know, and parents will say, you know, this is my 8-year-old champion backstroker. Well, there's no such thing as an 8-year-old champion backstroker. There's just an 8-year-old who, at that moment in time, because they're bigger or they do more training, or, I don't know, longer arms because their Uncle Fred had long arms, I don't know. For whatever reason, they just swim backstroke quicker than the other 8-year-olds. There's almost no chance that kid will ever represent New Zealand as a backstroker. The data, the stats, the coaching anecdotes, intuition, common sense says highly, highly unlikely they'll even be swimming by the time they're in their mid-teens, because swimming is one of those sports like rowing and some of the other big time commitment sports that have got massive dropout rates. Chances are they won't even be swimming at 15. So why classify your child and say, my child is an 8-year-old? But no, they're just a beautiful child who happens to swim that stroke a little bit quicker than the others at this moment in time. Why label who they are by a little bit of luck or freak genetics that give them an edge at that age? Because the kid then grows up, goes, I'm a backstroker, I'm a backstroker, I'm a backstroker. Well, what happens at 11, 12 and their body changes and they can't do it anymore? Who are they? And this thing around identity and sport, my God, there's so much good stuff written about that at the moment. Gee, parents have got a lot to do with that by labeling their kids as champion gymnasts at 6 and champion tennis players at 10. And they just push and push and push, trying to follow that one path because they've been told it's a path, and they push and push and push. The kid gets a 15 and goes, I've been a tennis player since I was 6. Everyone knows me. Well, who the hell am I now? I've got no idea. Who am I? My God, I'm nobody.
What are the costs there, Wayne? Like,
Huge.
you've spoken about dropping out of sport, but what are the costs to that individual and maybe that family dynamic? You must have seen some of that stuff.
Kids believe they fail, Ben. That's one of the most common things is they'll go, I've been told since I was 6 I was going to be a champion rugby player. Now, 15, I'm sitting at home playing Xbox 5 or whatever it is now. But their parents, their coach, everyone's been telling them, oh, you're great, unlimited potential, you could be the best, you could be a champion. And they're going, I failed because everyone told me it was inevitable that I was great and I was going to play for Barcelona, or I was going to win an Olympic gold medal. That can have such serious effects. Whereas we go the other way, which is just an experience, and they pull out a 15, they go, it's just not for me. I've got other things in my life I want to do, but geez, I love the game. And then when they're 18, 19, 20, excuse me, going to uni, they might go and pick up a rugby ball and play with the uni team. When they're in their 30s, guess where they're going to bring their kids? Back to the rugby club, because they had such a wonderful experience and had such a great time. But if the only thing we've said, it's All Blacks professional rugby or nothing, what are we giving these kids? The expectations we've set them up with there is only one outcome, greatness or nothing. Okay, well, I'm nothing. Do we really want a bunch of teenagers sitting around thinking they failed because they didn't play for the Crusaders or played for the Ferns or played for, an NRL team? Of course not. We want them all developing a lifelong relationship with just the love of participating and playing in sport. And from that will emerge talent and greatness. But we've got to break this model. We've got to stop telling parents that their kids are on the pathway to being great, because that's all they can see.
Wayne, you've got a new venture which is called The Switch, and you've got this awesome visual on there which it's time to switch what you think, say, do, and unlock your child's sporting potential. Can you tell us more about The Switch?
Yeah, The Switch was an idea that a friend of mine, Nigel Camilleri, came up with. He's a videographer, a very smart guy, but he's coaching his kids. And he'd seen something that I'd done on YouTube, and he just rang up cold and just said to me, he said, oh, that really resonated with me. I'm coaching my son in football, in athletics, and I'm always struggling to figure out, should I be thinking long-term? Should I be thinking short-term? And I said, mate, don't think about it at all. Just love him, accept him for who he is, and it'll fall where it falls. That's even whether you're a coach or a parent, it's the same job. And we just hit it off. And I said to him, what do you do for a day job? And he said, I do documentaries and videos. And I said, well, I talk too much. And I'd really love someone I can work with to get the message out to more people, more parents and more coaches about some of these things we talk about, and really try to switch them from this blind focus on winning at all costs to just participating and falling in love with what we do. So from that, we put together some videos and interviews. We've just sort of started kicking it off. There's an Instagram, which is The Switch Sport. There's a YouTube, which we're kicking up. There'll be a website, but it's just intended to be another source of information and a trusted source of resources for parents, carers, coaches, teachers to be able to go to and get some common sense. But as you guys know, the funny thing about common sense, it's not very common. So I get emails every day, Belinda, from parents, and the story is the same. It'll be something like, dear Wayne, my child was a champion tennis player at 7, and straight away I'm going, oh my God, please. But you read it out of respect. And when they were 10, we had to change coaches because they weren't improving as quickly as we knew that they should have. And now at 14 or 15, they want to give up tennis. What should we do? Sign frustrated parent. And they want me to give them a piece of magic that says, look, if you say these words in the right order above a red candle at midnight, everything will change. And unfortunately, I go back to the parents and say, let them go.
Yep.
What else are you going to say? Are you going to go, have you got any idea how much money we've spent on your tennis lessons, going to tennis competitions and on tennis rackets? Have you got any idea how much time I've spent? If you do that, you've lost them and probably damaged your relationship. If you bribe them or offer them incentives, that'll work for a short period of time. But eventually, if they don't love it, they're not going to do it. And they're certainly going to do it well. The only sensible and logical option when a kid says, I don't want to do this anymore, is to find out why, because it could just be a short-term conflict with a coach or people in the team are making fun of them because of their haircut. Could be some sort of stupid stuff. Remember all the things when we were teenagers that used to upset us? So it could be something short-term, obnoxious that you can do. It could be bullying and intimidation, which you've got to jump on, of course. But if it's just, I've had enough, I don't want to do it, throw your arms around them and say, you know what? Some of the best times I've ever had in my life have been watching you play and train. I love you, darling. And let them go. And if they go, hang on, mum and dad love me for me, they don't care if I play or not. They love me for the person I am. Maybe I'll come back. It's the only chance you've got of getting them to change their mind is to not try and make them change their mind. But I get the same stuff every day because the parents go, they were a champion at 6. And now at 15, all our dreams have crashed around us because they don't want to do it anymore. Please help us turn it around. It's because we oversold the dream to the parents the wrong way too early. And then you got to see everybody's heart broken and all sorts of issues as a result. So, yeah, I wanted to get that message out louder and stronger, and the Switch is going to be a vehicle for that.
Brilliant. What are some of the within there, if we're talking about parents and if we want our parents to be focused on, I think you use the word pro people, developing pro people rather than pro athletes. What are some of the values and the habits that you've seen work with parents who do this really, really well and that you have on your platforms and that you teach?
Well, the number one, Ben, is independence. There's a great, wonderful coach, and I recommend it. I'm not doing this for Jamie's commercial benefit, but Jamie Turner, wonderful guy, school teacher over in the Taranaki, but coached Olympic gold medalist Gwen Jorgensen. He's a Kiwi, and just a wonderful, very, very smart guy. If you get a chance to bring him on and get him to talk about developing athletes and developing people, he's as good as anyone that I know. And I had JT, I was mentoring some New Zealand swimming coaches for the last 18 months. I got JT to come on as a guest speaker. And one of the coaches asked him about developing athletes. It's one of the best things I've ever heard. And JT said, you got to think about your relationship with you, your child, and sport in the same way as you look at driving a car. And he said, because when they're 5 or 6, they don't care. They sit in the back. They go wherever you go. They don't really pay a lot of attention. Wherever you go, they jump out of the car and do it. So when they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, they sit in the front with you. And they might ask questions. Where are we going? What time are we leaving? They're a little bit more engaged than where you're driving the car. But this is powerful, Ben. He said, but remember, it was always about us at 16 giving them the keys to the car and say, off you go, darling. That by the time they're in their mid-teens, that they should be independent, self-responsible, self-accountable, and that they choose the direction and the timing that they want to go. It was all about giving them the car keys. And he said, the message is for coaches and for parents, always remember that the end game, well, not even the end game, the game is by the time they're in their mid-teens, they should be able to grab the reins of their own sport and be totally responsible for the realization of their potential and the determination of their own destiny. That's what we're about. The parents who get that, who start with their 8-year-olds emptying the dishwasher, who get their 10-year-olds to hang up their clothes and show them how to use a washing machine, who get their 12-year-olds to pack their own lunch, unpack their sports bag, clean their footy boots. the ones that are doing little things to give them independence, because independence means this is ownership. I own this experience. The parents who are still pushing them at 14, 15, 16 and doing everything for them just don't get it. Because 14, 15, 16, what did we all do? We all said, get out of my way. This is my life, my school, my friends, my music, my clothes, my haircut. This is my life, my choice. That's what they're doing as teenagers. As parents, sporting parents, you've got to realize that that's where they're at with their sport. At 15, they've got to go, I choose to be a rugby player. I choose to go to training. I choose, therefore, to pack my own bag, empty my dirty sports gear, do my own washing of my own football jerseys. I choose to make sure my diet is right. I choose to go to bed at 10:30 and make sure my electronics are off, because this is my life, my choice, my sport. If mum and dad are still setting the alarms, cleaning the boots, doing all the work for them, they have no ownership of it. They want to be a footy player or a netball player or whatever, but they don't own it. So the parents have got to be on this journey of progressive independence, responsibility, empowerment, and ownership, so that when the moment comes, they're driving the car themselves. And that came from a discussion with JT towards the end of last year. And that's been a real powerful game changer for me, even though I've known him for 30 years. So it's a great analogy for parents to get their heads around, is independence.
That's
show them the power of the choices that they make. A really important concept for parents is, and look, I got 4 kids. I got 4 stepkids. Lib and I got 8 between us. And I get it. You want to do things for them, and you want to physically cook them dinner. And I get it, because we love them and we want to be seen that we're supporting them and helping them. That's not what because if you stop and think, that's not what we needed as teenagers either. Well, that's the last thing we wanted, was mum or dad doing everything for us. We didn't like their music. We didn't like their clothes. We didn't like their deodorant. We didn't like their TV shows. That's the nature of being a teenager. And I get asked this about teenage dropout. Well, the best thing to do with teenage dropout is leave them alone. Give them the tools that they go, I will choose to play for the Silver Ferns with the behaviours that will make it happen. You can't force excellence. You really can't.
Yeah, and I guess in that analogy, they might drive that car towards a sport, but they might drive that car towards somewhere else in life, but they'll have all those values and those skills to be successful wherever they choose to drive that car.
Yeah, and look, and if they're going to be good, Ben, a netball coach from the Firebirds that I worked with for a little while, she had a wonderful phrase. She said, the job of us as coaches and parents working with junior athletes is to get them job ready, so that when they knock on the door of the Firebirds, a professional netball team, they should be job ready. They should know what to eat, know what to drink, know how to manage alcohol, know how to fill in a form, know how to drive, know how to take care of themselves. They should be job ready. If they're knocking on, no matter how talented they are, they're knocking on the door of the Firebirds going, what do I eat? I've never cooked a meal. I've never washed clothes. I've never had to get myself to training before. They find it really difficult. Independence is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to your kids. The greatest thing you could give to them is give them nothing, if you like, which is a bit of a joke, obviously, love and care and nutrition. But, I say that to parents all the time. The greatest thing you can do for your kids is nothing. And I play a lot of games with my sporting parent sessions, is I'll say to the parents, stand up if in the last week you filled a water bottle, emptied a water bottle, hung up a dirty towel, cleaned sporting equipment, packed a sports bag, and 90% of the parents in the room will stand up with smiles in their faces thinking they've done the right thing. And I usually have a bit of fun. I'll say, well, stop bloody doing it. To try and say, guys, I know why you're doing it, but stop it. Because the independence is the greatest gift you can give them.
It is hard though sometimes in our household. My husband and I I've got a 14-year-old son, and every week it's like, have you packed this? Have you packed that? And my husband's like, you've got to stop. He's got to do it himself.
Yeah.
I don't want him to not have his water bottle, but actually he's got to learn. So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about, independence and things like that. But sometimes there is this my heart is like, oh, I just want to do it for him, but I'm not doing him any favors if I'm the one who is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes, Belinda, what I find with teenagers, think back again to some of the stuff we've discussed. Who do teenagers listen to? At the bottom of the list, put you, not you. Not anymore. At 8, yep, you were their goddess. That, with no disrespect to religious people, you're just everything in their world. Now, they still love you, of course, but you know what it's like with a 14-year-old boy. One day it's, Mum, I love you. Can I make you a coffee? And the next day it's, because they're up and down. They're all over the place. So I talk to parents about their waves. We've got to be rocks. We've got to be consistent and fair and all those things. But you're exactly right. If you go, how did I learn at 14, 15, 16? I learned through failing and went, wow, that doesn't work. I better do it a different way. Or I learned because I watched another teenager that I look up to do it the right way, or I saw a hero of mine do it. So I find sometimes with kids, they're going, as much as it breaks my heart, they're not going to listen to me. But there's a 16-year-old in our club who's played very senior rep. He's an incredible athlete. I might get them to talk to him because they seem to do all the right, because they're the influencer in their life. And I mean, how many times you go online and the world is not driven by facts. It's driven by influencers who are in turn paid by not cigarette companies, but they're paid by cosmetic firms and electronic firms to influence people in a very subtle way. Kids don't listen to adults. So you've got to find a way to influence his attitudes and opinions, which is not you. And, parents get so frustrated. I feel your pain. But I used to find it, even being in this business, that my kids wouldn't listen to me. And it used to frustrate me because, I'd come home from, I don't know, being in England, working with Manchester United, and I'd come home, my 12-year-old's playing football, and I've come home from one of the greatest football environments in the world, and he wouldn't listen to me. So I pulled my hair out, going, mate, what more do you want? It wasn't the message, it was me. It's that I could have been talking to Lionel Messi, but if the message is coming from me, who he's not listening to anymore, he doesn't love me any less, but he just doesn't listen to me anymore. I had to find a different way of getting the message through. And the way we quite often do it at footy teams, Belinda, is we'll get the senior players to influence the younger players. So we buddy them up or mentor them up, which they do in schools, as you know, that we'll buddy them up so that might be the team captain might travel with them on a plane and say, gee, I don't know about you, but I always get thirsty when I'm on a plane. I always carry some extra water with me. Younger player goes, I respect him. He's influencing my attitude. He's the best player in the team. Hey, well, maybe I do that too.
Yeah.
Quite often they don't listen to the coach. Even so, you create influence circles and influence groups to get the message across.
As part of that role for the parents, then analysing and selecting a good environment for your kids that you can see where teenagers are being developed with these certain attributes, these certain values, and that's where I'm going to place my child, and that's maybe part of your job.
It's a bit of a minefield, Ben, I think, because there's a lot of schools and a lot of clubs, a lot of private operators in many different sports, but football's a good example, who are offering academy programs. And it's hard for a parent. You and I would look at it and go, oh, yeah, they say academy program, but yeah, not really. All they're really offering is really nice tracksuits and someone who's got a base level coaching accreditation. It's hard for parents to be discerning and go, is this the right environment? Is this the environment where my child's potential as a human being is going to be shaped and realised? So I often say to parents, go and interview the coach and just talk to them and ask them questions about what their core philosophies are. Coaches don't like it when I say that, particularly the ones who are running commercial interests. But I say you wouldn't go in and buy a television without saying to the sales professional, what's the best TV for me? And they'll say to you, well, what sort of TV do you want? How much space have you got? How big's the room? How many people watch TV? We don't buy anything without asking a lot of questions. Look what you go through buying a car. And yet quite often parents will go, I've heard that there's a great academy here. And they just say they don't ask the coaches, well, tell me, how are you going to develop my child's potential? You've got that right as a parent, and you should be doing it and try to understand what's the underpinning philosophy. Is it talent driven, which is just the grinder, just get them in, push them as hard as I can and hope one or two pop out the top end? Is it holistic in nature? Is it individualized care and development, or what's their philosophy on how they're developing your child be better? Because in the end, the parents have more purchasing power, if you like to stretch the analogy, than they realize. If parents just keep dropping kids off at clubs without asking, what's your philosophy on developing my kids? Well, then nothing's ever going to change, because they'll just keep doing whatever they feel like doing, whatever they're traditionally doing. If it's important to you, meet with the coach and find these things out. By the same token, coaches always interview the parents, because you never know what you're going to take on. Great story. One of my tennis coaching mates, Terry, he said, I always interview parents and with the child in the room. And I look at the parents and the child, and I look at the child and I say, so why do you love tennis? And if mum and dad answer, that's a cross. I look at the child again and I say, what is it about my program that really excites you? Mum and dad answer, there's 2 crosses. I look at the child and say, what do you hope to gain? What are your ambitions? What are your dreams about tennis? Mum and dad answer again first. He said, here's a business card of another coach, because you know where it's going to end up. The kid isn't, their heart, their spirit, their passion isn't tied up. It's parents are driving it, and you know, inevitably, regardless of the child's talent, more or less where it's going to end up. And I think he's right. I think you've got to spend some time, coaches and parents. Is this the right place for me? Is this the right environment? These are the right people. And if you're a parent who's really driven and you think your kids are going to be great and you want to seek out a coach with a similar mindset, that's your choice. There's nothing wrong with that. That's your choice. If you're a parent who wants an holistic, individualized, love and care-based program, you find coaches will do that. That's a decision you got to make. But the dumbest thing you can do is not ask a question.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm just looking at the time. So Wayne, we'd like to finish with a couple of questions. So one of the first questions is, what is one do and don't for parents of youth athletes?
Love your kids unconditionally. And unconditionally means unconditionally. If they pick up the ball in their own dead ball line and run around 15 opposition players, score under the post and win the grand final, give them a hug, kiss them, tell them they're amazing and that you love them. If they drop the ball in their own goal line and the opposition fall on it and they win the grand final, tell them you love them, tell them they're amazing, how proud you are and love them with everything you've got. We are the quite often in our own lives, we're the ultimate source of unconditional love. They win, we love them. They lose, we love them. They succeed, we love them. They fail. It's irrelevant. They need to look at us and go, no matter what happens, no matter what mistakes I make, how successful I am, how bad my failures are, this person, these people love me for who I am and will be there at all times. That then gives the kid it gives all of us this incredible strength to go, I can fail, but that rock is still there. I can try a new position that I've never tried before and stuff it up, but that rock is still there for me. Where parents tie how they show their love and care for their kids on their sporting performances or academic success, nightmare. And you're creating so many problems. So number one, do love them. Unconditionally means unconditional. There is no in the following circumstances, or if they, unconditional means unconditional. And the don't classify them by what they do at a young age. your child is not a 9-year-old netballer. They're not a 6-year-old swimmer. They're not a 10-year-old gymnast. They're just a kid who does that thing. You've got to give them the time, the opportunity, and the environment to grow into the thing that they may become eventually, knowing that that could still change. And that for the vast majority of kids, they don't play sport past their teens because life catches up with them. And that's normal and natural. Not every kid has to be, wants to be, could be, or should be an elite level athlete. So move on from that stuff. If your kid's absolutely brilliant as a gymnast at 6, your child is Susan. They're not the brilliant gymnast. They're Susan who just happens to do gymnastics. Their identity is who they are first and foremost. So my biggest don't think of them, talk about them, or introduce them as the thing they do until they're playing for the All Blacks. Then, yeah, sure, they're Sean the rugby player. Great, fantastic. But at a young age, yeah, don't be obsessed with talking about them and thinking about them as the thing that they do.
Brilliant. Okay, so now we're going to switch it over. If you were sitting here talking to a youth athlete, someone who's aspiring to be great in their sport, maybe 14, 15, 16, what's one do for them and one don't for them?
Yeah, really easy. It's a New Zealand story, Ben. I was working with Tammy Reid, and it makes me think of a wonderful husband that we lost, Snuffy Reid. But we're working with a bunch of triathletes in Manawatu, and this kid walks in and he's got a broken leg, a stress fracture, which is not uncommon for triathletes. And we were going to do a session. I was going to do something with the team, and he was really down and depressed. And I said, mate, what's your problem? He said, I got a broken leg. And I said, I'm going to go and work with the team. When I come back, I want you to tell me 10 great things about having a broken leg. And he looked at me like I was an idiot, a bit like you're looking right now at me. And but
that's how I look all the time.
No, but he was. Everybody looks at me like I'm an idiot. I get used to it. But I said to him, so I came back and I said, okay, what's your 10 things? And he said, stupid. He said, I got a broken leg. I said, well, mate, you're a triathlete. You could do more swimming. You could do strength training. You could learn to change a bike tire. You could call up someone like Hamish Carter, Olympic gold medalist, and ask him what did he do leading into his Olympic gold medal success in 2004, or Bev Doherty or somebody like that. You could go into a great strength training program, go do a cooking course, you go do meditation. Well, I came up with nearly 30 things that were great about having a broken leg. To come back to your question, as a teenager, the greatest skill you can learn, and this comes from Viktor Frankl's book that was written in the 1930s, 1940s, the greatest thing that you can develop, the greatest skill you can develop as a teenager is to choose how to deal with the things that happen to you and happen around you. If your approach is always, I failed, I didn't get selected, I must be useless, I'm no good, I'm never going to be anything. If your approach is always anything goes wrong, take it personally and take it too deep, it's going to be a tough life ahead. If you go, I didn't get selected, I hate that, really sucks, I'm going to work harder and come back next year. If you can learn the power of choosing how to respond to the things that happen to you, your life's going to have unlimited potential. And as a teenager, don't be too hung up on an individual training session or dropping a ball or not getting selected. Develop the strength and the courage to choose to respond to all the things that happen to you, and you'll be unstoppable. So the ability to choose. Thing don't to do is a similar line is everyone has a bad day. Everyone has a bad game. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't take it too personally. Just learn from it, get up and move on. The number of times I'll see teenagers who go, I missed the tackle that cost us the game. Instead of saying, well, I need to improve my tackling technique. There's an area that I can improve on. They go, oh, I always miss tackles. I'm hopeless at football. I shouldn't have even been playing here. This negativity spiral is don't get caught up in that. Just treat mistakes and errors as learning experiences. Don't take it personally. Move on quickly. Really important stuff for all of us, but also really for teenagers.
Wayne,
Yeah, I love that. I love both of those. And I think when you think of some of the great athletes that we see, they do both of those incredibly well. Your first one, I thought straight away of Kobe Bryant, and I remember he broke his hand, his shooting hand. So he's out for 6 weeks or something like that. But he uses a real positive, trained his left hand. When he came back, he was a lot better, and you could see him using his left hand to shoot a lot more. And he actually spoke about that sort of moment having a really positive effect on him.
Yeah,
Whereas you
great
could take
example.
that as a real negative, right?
Well, it's a great example, Ben. And, we talked earlier about the influences on my life. Is I was in Canberra. I was paying my way through uni as a gym instructor, believe it or not, and giving people strength training programs. And the Canberra Raiders NRL team were based very close to the gym. And one of their great players who went on to want to be the greats of all time, a guy called Bradley Clyde, who was he did an ACL on the Sunday. He had surgery on the Monday. He got out of hospital on the Wednesday. He was in the gym doing upper body work on the Thursday with an ACL, still in pretty much full leg cast, and supported doing lat pull downs and bench press. Or he could have sat at home going, I've got a year to go. Woe is me. I'm going to put on some weight and eat crappy food because I've got a bad. The greats are able to go, yeah, it sucks. I hate it. I wish it hadn't happened, but I choose to move on and make my upper body strong. And that year he comes back, and that's when he starts making the kangaroos, and he's going down it because he was so bloody strong when he came back.
Yep.
Whereas if you adopt the other one, which is, it's not fair, it always happens to me. Yeah, life can be really tough because you've chosen to make it tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wayne, what's one book, tool, or resource that you would recommend for parents or youth athletes?
Right, apart from my own stuff, but no, they just kidding. Look, I think with parents, the best way to be a great sporting parent is just to be a great parent. So I would recommend any of the great books that are written on parenting generally, because all sports parenting is great parenting applied in a sporting context. So you'll pick up any book on parenting and raising good kids and raising positive kids and all those things, and it just applies to the sports thing. Don't overthink it too much. That all sports parenting is great parenting applied to the sporting context. I tend to surf a little bit, getting on, not surfing in the waves, but tend to go on to YouTube from time to time and just Google things like best parenting advice. Great parenting advice. Having said that, parents are going to be really careful that they're not too selective on that, because sometimes they'll go, my child's a swimmer, therefore I'm going to Google Michael Phelps's parents, because if he's a champion and we do what his parents did, my kids will become champions. Yeah, that applies. His parents are great for Michael. Focus on, how do I just be a good parent? How do I show unconditional love? How do I show patience? How do I encourage independence? How do I teach resilience? All those, how do I teach the things that only I can teach? How do I teach grit, mental tough, all those things? Just be a good parent. And there's millions of texts out there on great parenting.
Brilliant. I love that. This is where you can sell your stuff. Where can we find you? I know you've got the Switch. You've got your own stuff as well. Where's the best place for parents, coaches, athletes who want to know a little bit more about what you do, maybe contact you? Where can they get in touch?
Yeah, good. I find I'm lucky that I've got, or unlucky, depending on living in the AI universe that we do, that I've got so much stuff online. If they just go Wayne Goldsmith in YouTube, there's about 120 free videos on there, and I'm about to ramp that up a little bit. And if they go Wayne Goldsmith, they can join me on social media on LinkedIn. It's usually Wayne Goldsmith Coaching is the common thread across Instagram, Twitter, X, across LinkedIn, Facebook. If they go Wayne Goldsmith Coaching, all the socials will pop up rather than have to follow a particular line. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Every so often I go back and I look at some of my older stuff to see if it's still relevant, because that's the issue as you get older. It's not content so much, it's relevance. And yeah, I'm still happy with the work that I've got online, that it's because human beings don't change. Where I'm doing a session later on today with Jason Pine on from New Zealand Radio. And the question is around the topic of today's discussion is on renewal. Can people actually change the way they do things? And I go back every so often, I look and, does it still hold up? It does, I think, because human behavior hasn't changed in a long, long time. So, thinking about that Viktor Frankl book, that was written in the 30s by a guy who was a psychiatrist going through the Holocaust. Lessons are still the same for us. There's a great text written by Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Chapter 1, first line, seek to understand before trying to be understood. It was written in the 1960s. Still applicable. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, written in the 50s and 60s. First chapter, people don't like being told they're wrong. I mean, a lot of the stuff we talk about is great ideas from giants that have come before us, where we stand on their shoulders. I mean, even Plato said, or was attributed with saying, the problem with the youth today is they're lazy, they don't want to work hard, and they don't like listening to their elders. I mean, if Plato is talking about the same things that the three of us are dealing with today, then we're just part of a long chain of people saying very similar things by our observations of human behavior.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Where the school that we're at is actually a lighthouse school for Stephen Covey. It's interesting that you bring him up, because those habits, and we're working in a primary school where we've got the kids from 5 to 11, and they have a massive effect. But simple habits sold in a different way by different people, it's all the same stuff.
It is.
Really, that works.
Stephen Covey Jr., so his son wrote a really wonderful book called The Speed of Trust. And in it, he argues that trust is an incredibly valuable commodity, because if I trust you and Belinda, and I want to sell you something, I'll go, yeah, look, I'll put it in the mail, send me the money next week. Everything's really quick. If we don't trust each other, I'll say, well, can you send me an invoice, send me a deposit? And every step along the way takes time, takes detail. And so I grabbed that book, and we use that in NRL, we use it in AFL, on the better we are at developing trust relationships, the quicker and more effective our communication is, the faster we can get change and learning happening. And so when we've got 5 days to go from a loss to a win, if we trust each other, the communication's more effective, and it helps us, it increases the speed in which we can turn things around. So there's so many books that the lessons are directly applicable to what we do. I think too many of us go, I'm a tennis coach, I've got to only read tennis texts. Whereas the beauty of our world is the solutions are out there if you lift your head and you're prepared to look.
I love that. And someone was saying something the other day in terms of a book. Books don't cost a hang of a lot of money, but they tend to be someone who spent, like you said at the start of this conversation, 30 years. They've got a PhD in that subject, and they've condensed it down into the most important things, and you can get that really cheap, and you can get through it in maybe 5 or 6 hours, and download it yourself. So powerful.
It's all there. And I think the beautiful thing, Ben, with even things like AI now is, if you go into Claude or Neo or Blaze or any of them, Chat, you go in there and go, what are the 10 best sayings or phrases about raising teenagers that have ever been written? Some broad general prompt like that. It'll spend with the references included, who said it and when. AI will pop that out. Anyone who says, oh, I really don't know what I'm supposed to do, that's rubbish. We've never had so much information available in your hand. Anyone can get anything, anywhere, anytime for free. Anyone who says, I don't know this stuff is kidding themselves, because we've never had more information than we've ever had, but information without a commitment to actually change behaviour. If nothing changes, nothing changes. It all comes down to how good we are as parents and as coaches in actually inspiring kids to change. And we've never had so much information available so easily and so readily. It's a wonderful time to be in this business.
Yeah, and look, we really appreciate the information that you've brought through. And one of the things I love is that you're great at cutting through the clutter. There's so much misinformation out there today, or so much information full stop. What I love is that you're able to cut through with that experience that you have and say, keep it simple. This is what works. Be a great parent. So look, just a huge thank you to us. I've got heaps out of it myself, and I know all of our listeners will as well.
Yeah,
Absolute pleasure, Ben.
Thank you so much, Wayne. This has been amazing. And yeah, we hope to chat to you again.
You never know what happens in a big city. I'm over in New Zealand 2 or 3 times a year most of the time. So yeah, let's catch up for a Monteith's Dark at some stage.
Absolutely.
My favourite beer.
Thanks, Wayne.
Pleasure, Belinda.
Really hope you enjoyed that. Belinda and I got so much from talking to Wayne. And super interesting. He's able to cut through and he knows exactly what works. And like the other people we're talking to, it all comes back to character. And the parent's job of being able to develop that character, those habits at a young age, is so vital. And that is what will make them into great athletes. That is what will make them into great people. That is what will make them into great game changers. If you like this and you'd like to hear more from people like Wayne, we'd love you to leave a review. Subscribe to the podcast. Every single person helps us bring you more and bigger, better people. If you'd like to hear more content like this, we've broken it down into our social media. You can check that out in the show notes. Then join our Facebook group, sign up to our newsletter where you can communicate with us and everyone else in our community, and you can get our weekly newsletter with tips and tricks that is going to help you along your journey. Hey, thanks again for listening. Have a great week and can't wait to bring you the next one.